Hello and welcome once again to the Dr. Zeero Free Magic Secret Show, where we investigate all forms of magic, and we also teach all you little supervillain villainettes and villainesses and shit out there the magical way of becoming a magical supervillain. We have all kinds of tactics to strengthen your bountiful understanding of manipulation and rising in your ascent to supervillainy through magical means and such. And today's topic is something that is very important because we talk a lot about, supervillain tactics, different supervillain things, but we want to get to the source of something that's called heretic druidry. Now, in a soft sense, you could say heretic druidry is when you hijack the druid notion and warp it to your own specifications, which makes you, of course, a heretic to the larger movement. But there's also ways to be a druid supervillain and to subsume and culturally appropriate the druid dynamic towards your supervillain master plan and your supervillain hierarchy. Now, if you know anything about druids, you'll know that there's 3 classes, right? Yeah, to be a druid, you had to study for about 20 years. Then you were a master druid. In the interim period, you start out being a bard. And that's when you're like a musician, poet. You learn all the stuff bit by bit by bit by bit. You're like a bard for a number of years. Then eventually you graduate to becoming an ovate. And being an ovate is being like a diviner and a seer. It's kind of like the witch doctor of the bunch. And then the proper druid was the dude, right? He was the boss of all 3 classes, right? So, talking about cultural appropriation. And why that's fine, because we're supervillains. We do whatever the fuck we want. We just take it. That's the whole point, all this dibble-dabble about cultural insensitivity. This shit goes out the window, man. Supervillain is free for all. Supervillain is never having to apologize. It's just taking whatever the fuck you want. That's why chaos magic is the preferred magical etho of the supervillain magician. It's totally cool with cultural appropriation. It's cool with stealing anything out of the history of magic and using it for one's own ends, right? So, take a little bit of chaos magic, a little bit of a supervillain manifesto, and mix it up with the druid notion. So, what's the druid in today's society? Now, there's all those proper druid groups out there doing it the more old school way. Doc doesn't have any problem with them. They stand for something pretty noble, if you ask me. And then, of course, there's historical druids, which we only know so much about, and they're kind of scary. They are. And nobody really wants to be controlled by some wizard mob running the show like a mafia. I mean, we can romanticize it and glamorize it and all this stuff, and it makes for a cool mythology and for cool stories and all that, but you wouldn't want to live under that system, really. I mean, it made sense for the ancient world and whatnot, but today, that would be an invading force. Doc believes in democracy, even if ultimately Doc kind of just wants to burn everything to the ground because it's fucking funny. Because, hey, I'm a supervillain. I don't gotta pretend to be anything else. But there's still the devil and the angel on my shoulder trying to, get me to go this way or that way or whatever. So we're talking about druidry. And think of it like this. Now, I know what you're thinking right off the bat. You're thinking, okay, your henchmen are the bards, the mini-bosses would be the ovates, and then the supervillain proper at the head of the organization would be the master druid. And then, of course, and then you also have the arch druid, which would be like the main dude. But, supervillains... there isn't quite a supervillain international yet. There's no real leader. So, and we don't want one anyway. Kind of, being a supervillain is being like independent. You never really answer to anyone. You just answer to yourself. And that's all that really matters. So, until like Onslaught or something like that shows up. Or who was the dude then in DC, the Underworld Unleashed? Remember that guy? He showed up and he offered everybody all those super villains, superpowers in exchange for their souls and everything. And all Joker wanted was a box of Cuban cigars in return. That was his sold his soul for. That was pretty funny on that part. But back to being a supervillain druid. So, this will piss more people off, but here's the thing. When you're a supervillain of Dr. Zero's breed, and you're like a more of an old school, old worldly magician type, that really is monotheistic in the sense of one unknowable riddle of a creator, an architect, and then there's the creation. So, that doesn't really align with, historical druidry. Because here's the thing. The druids, they weren't a religion. They were like overseers of all the different religions. They were sort of like what's the right word? Utilitarian priestly figure for officiating all kinds of ceremonies and everything. So, they weren't a religion in and of themselves. It's kind of a blank, which is good because in today's society, the other druid groups, they try to be like jack of all trades, going through the different tribes of in the pagan community and in witchcraft and whatnot. They try to be the priestly figure for all the different groups. They try to reach out. That's kind of their function. So to be a supervillain druid, you would be facilitating all the other supervillains out there. You would be their priestly sort. You would be their handyman. You would be their go-to. You know what I mean? So in the larger sense, how about cultural appropriation, all that shit? Getting back to what I was saying about this being an old world monotheistic sort of magician guy. It's cool that you can just dump all the Celtic mythology. Like you don't need to carry that shit. And talking about religions, that don't make sense. Doc's just gonna say it. None of these pagan gods are real. You know what I mean? They're representations, psychological representations of faces of humanity projected, and it can be faces of nature projected as humanity. It's myths and legends. Some of them are cool. I like the Celtic myths and legends. I don't got any problem with them. I'm just saying, it's mythology, and you can dump mythology at the door. What we're looking for is solid program, and that's what druidry has to offer. So, you dump all the Celtic shit, and then you adopt your own mythology from the start, whatever that might be. And it branches off, and more and more and more and more. So there's the question of all kinds of druid magic that applies. And that is a gigantic topic to try to get into how this all fuses. But you have to understand that once you put yourself in the driver's seat of the supervillain chariot and you're cruising along, anything can happen. So this is just Doc Zero trying to say that, there's all kinds of uses for all kinds of magical systems and magical traditions. And you should approach everything with the zest and zeal and anarchic madness that chaos magic presents. Because it's all for the taking. Just like the world. The world is your oyster. See, when you roll as a supervillain, everything just happens effortlessly. You don't even got to try. You don't got to try so hard to get those henchmen. They just kind of like show up at the right moments and such. So anyway, that might sound a little rambling, but I did want to get to the point. I'm going to do some future episodes here about heretic druidry, dial it back a little bit from the supervillain thing, but it's really hard because what else is Doc? Anyway, this is just yet another video in the supervillain monologue series. There will be many more coming your way. Do stay tuned. Check out the playlist. It has all of them. And remember, never let the schemers control your little world. And as always, here's a hot rockin' outro. And hail Arkham. Operation Arkham engaged and moving fluidly fast. Later, kids.